Dog raised orphaned lion cubs. 10 years later, something shocking happened. The gunshots echoed through the African savanna like thunder, sending flocks of birds scattering into the dawn sky. Sarah Martinez, head ranger at the Kivili Wildlife Sanctuary, gripped her binoculars tighter as she scanned the horizon. Another shot rang out, closer this time, and beside her, Bella, her trusted shepherd dog, let out a low growl. "Easy, girl," Sarah whispered, though her own heart was racing. Poachers had become increasingly bold in recent months, but they never ventured this close to the sanctuary's core territory before. She reached for her radio to alert the other rangers when Bella suddenly tensed, her ears perking up at a sound only she could hear. Before Sarah could react, Bella bolted into the tall grass. "Bella, wait!" Sarah called out, but it was too late. The dog had disappeared into the golden sea of grass that stretched as far as the eye could see. This wasn't like her trained companion at all. Bella was known throughout the sanctuary for her disciplined behavior and unwavering obedience. Sarah cursed under her breath and radioed for backup. "This is Martinez. Possible poacher activity in Section D. I'm tracking on foot." She checked her tranquilizer gun and followed Bella's trail, her boots crushing the dry grass beneath them. The morning heat was already building, and sweat trickled down Sarah's neck as she pushed forward. She trained Bella since she was a puppy, and in 5 years of service, the shepherd had never once broken protocol like this. Something was very wrong. After 10 minutes of careful tracking, Sarah heard it, a soft whimpering that didn't sound like any animal she was familiar with. She crouched low and moved forward, parting the grass with her hands. What she saw made her gasp. Bella stood in a small clearing, her body curved protectively around 3 tiny lion cubs. They couldn't have been more than a few weeks old, their spots still visible on their tawny fur. But it was what lay beyond them that made Sarah's blood run cold. The body of their mother, a magnificent lioness, lay lifeless with a poacher's bullet in her side. "Oh God!" Sarah breathed, quickly scanning the area for any sign of the poachers. They must have fled after hearing the sanctuary vehicles approaching. She reached for her radio again, but stopped when she noticed something extraordinary. Bella, instead of maintaining her usual alert guard position, was lying down beside the cubs. More surprisingly, the cubs weren't showing any fear. The smallest one, distinguished by a unique dark patch of fur above his right eye, was actually pawing at Bella's face with tiny, clumsy movements. "Bella?" Sarah called softly. The shepherd dog looked up at her with eyes that seemed to plead. Sarah had seen that look before, when Bella had lost her own litter of puppies to a viral infection last year. The veterinarians had warned them that the depression might linger, but Bella had thrown herself into her work, seemingly moving past the tragedy. Now, watching her shepherd dog gently nuzzle the orphaned cubs, Sarah realized that perhaps Bella hadn't moved on at all. She'd just been waiting for someone to protect. The radio crackled to life. "Martinez, what's your position? We've secured the perimeter but no sign of the poachers." Sarah keyed the radio, her eyes never leaving the unusual scene before her. "I'm going to need Dr. Chun and the mobile veterinary unit. And maybe Dr. Williams from behavioral research too. You're not going to believe what I'm looking at." The next few hours were a blur of activity. The cubs were examined, their mother's body was respectfully removed for autopsy, and a thorough search for evidence was conducted. But through it all, one thing remained constant: Bella refused to leave the cubs' side. Dr. Chin, the sanctuary's chief veterinarian, scratched his head as he observed Bella's behavior. "I've never seen anything quite like this," he admitted. "She's already trying to regurgitate food for them, just like a mother lion would. It's unprecedented. We need to move them to the nursery," Dr. Williams insisted. "They require specialized care, proper nutrition. We can't just leave them out here." But when they tried to separate the cubs from Bella, the smallest one, whom they'd started calling Kovu because of his dark marking, began wailing in distress. The other cubs joined in, and Bella became visibly agitated, though she remained gentle. Sarah watched the interaction with growing fascination. "What if," she began slowly, "what if we didn't separate them? Both doctors turned to look at her as if she'd lost her mind. "Hear me out," Sarah continued. "Bella's trained in wildlife monitoring. She knows how to track and protect. She's gentle enough to handle our most sensitive cases. And most importantly, these cubs trust her. That could be crucial for their survival." "It's risky," Dr. Chin warned. "Even if Bella continues to show maternal behavior, she can't nurse them. And what happens when they start growing? They're lions, Sarah. Eventually, instinct takes over." Sarah looked at Bella, who was now cleaning the smallest cub with careful, gentle licks. "Maybe," she said softly. "But maybe not. Look at her, she's not just acting on instinct. She's chosen them." After hours of debate, a compromise was reached. A special enclosure would be built, one that connected to both the nursery and Sarah's ranger station. The cubs would receive proper care and monitoring, but Bella would be allowed to stay with them. It was an experiment unlike any other, and none of them could predict how it would turn out. As Sarah helped settle Bella and the cubs into their temporary housing that first night, she noticed something that gave her hope. The smallest cub, Kovu, had wrapped his tiny paw around one of Bella's ears as he slept, while she curled her body protectively around all three cubs. In that moment, watching this unlikely family, Sarah realized they were witnessing something extraordinary, a bond that defied nature itself. What she didn't know then was that this was just the beginning. The real surprises, the ones that would challenge everything they thought they knew about wildlife behavior, were still to come. And little Kovu, the runt with the dark mark, would prove to be far more special than anyone could have imagined. Dawn broke over the sanctuary, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The morning silence was broken by an unusual sound, not quite a roar, not quite a bark, but something in between. The source? Kovu, the young lion who was rapidly becoming the sanctuary's most fascinating resident. At 18 months old, Kovu had grown into a magnificent specimen, his muscles rippling beneath his tawny coat and his dark-marked face framed by the beginnings of a magnificent mane. But it wasn't his appearance that drew gasps from visitors and sparked intense debate among wildlife experts. It was his behavior. While his siblings had naturally gravitated toward typical lion behaviors, stalking, pouncing, and practicing their hunting skills, Kovu seemed to be following a completely different playbook. His daily routine had become a source of endless amazement for the sanctuary staff. Every morning, he would wait by the entrance of his enclosure, tail wagging vigorously, not the lazy swish of a contented big cat, but the enthusiastic, full-body wag of an excited dog. The moment Bella appeared, he would let out his signature bark roar, a sound that had taken months to perfect and still made the other lions look at him strange. "It's absolutely unprecedented," Dr. Thompson, the sanctuary's leading behavioral expert, explained to a group of visiting researchers. "We've seen cases of animals adopting certain behaviors from other species, but nothing to this extent. Kovu isn't just mimicking a few actions, he's fundamentally operating as if he were a dog." The evidence was impossible to ignore. When Sarah, the head ranger, would bring out the special reinforced ball they'd designed for him, regular dog toys hadn't lasted long against his strength. Kovu would drop into a perfect play bow, his massive front end lowered, rear end in the air, tail wagging frantically. It was a posture straight out of the Canine Handbook, executed by a 400-pound lion. But it wasn't just play behavior that set Kovu apart. He had begun displaying complex social behaviors typically associated with domestic dogs. When Bella would patrol the perimeter of their shared enclosure, Kovu would trot alongside her, matching her pace perfectly. He would stop when she stopped, scan the horizon when she did, and even attempt to bark at potential threats. The most astounding development came during the sanctuary's training sessions. Bella, as one of their top working dogs, regularly participated in obedience and tracking exercises. Kovu would watch these sessions with intense focus, and to everyone's amazement, began responding to the same commands. "Sit!" Sarah would call out, and not only would Bella assume the position, but Kovu would too, settling his enormous frame onto the ground in a perfect imitation of his adoptive mother. "Stay calm." Down, one by one, he mastered them all, though the sight of a full-grown male lion performing dog commands never ceased to amaze visitors. Perhaps most remarkably, Kovu had developed an unusual approach to hunting. While his siblings would instinctively stalk and pounce on prey that entered their enclosure, Kovu would attempt to herd small animals toward the exit points, just as he'd seen Bella do during her shepherding demonstrations. It was as if he'd completely rewritten his predatory instincts. "What we're seeing here goes beyond simple imitation," Dr. Thompson noted in his research journal. "Kovu has developed a hybrid behavioral pattern that combines the physical capabilities of a lion with the social and emotional patterns of a domestic dog. He's essentially created his own unique way of being." The sanctuary's other lions seemed equally puzzled by Kovu's behavior. They would watch with apparent confusion as their brother chased after thrown sticks, barked at passing vehicles, and wagged his tail at approaching humans instead of retreating to a safe distance. Yet despite his unusual behavior, they accepted him, creating a strange but harmonious dynamic in the sanctuary. One particular incident stood out in illustrating just how deep Kovu's dog-like behaviors ran. During a thunderstorm, instead of seeking solitude like most lions would, Kovu pressed himself against Bella, whimpering at each thunderclap just as a frightened dog might. Bella, showing her own remarkable adaptation, treated him exactly as she would a nervous puppy, letting him huddle close until the storm passed. As weeks turned into months, Kovu's unique behaviors became more pronounced rather than diminishing as some experts had predicted. He developed an uncanny ability to read human emotions, responding to their moods with dog-like empathy. When Sarah had a particularly rough day, she would often find Kovu waiting by the fence, offering the same kind of silent companionship that made dogs such beloved pets. "We need to be careful not to anthropomorphize too much," Dr. Thompson would remind his colleagues. "But it's impossible to deny that Kovu has developed emotional and social responses that are far more canine than feline. The real question is, how will these learned behaviors hold up as he continues to mature?" It was a valid concern. Kovu was still growing, his frame becoming more powerful by the day. While his gentle, dog-like demeanor showed no signs of changing, nature had a way of asserting itself. No one could predict with certainty whether his unique upbringing would continue to override his natural instincts. But for now, Kovu seemed content in his dual nature, either fully lion nor dog, but something wonderfully unique. He had created his own way of being, challenging everything the experts thought they knew about behavioral development and species-specific traits. As the sun set over the sanctuary each evening, visitors would often catch a glimpse of an extraordinary sight: a massive lion, sitting obediently beside a shepherd dog, both watching the horizon with the same alert posture, both wagging their tails in the same way, both ready to bark at any sign of trouble. It was a picture that defied explanation, and hinted at even more surprises to come. Life at the sanctuary took an unexpected turn when Bella, now 7 years old, became pregnant. The news spread excitement and anxiety throughout the staff, not because of the pregnancy itself, but because of the unique family dynamic they'd created. How would Kovu, now a fully grown male lion, react to the arrival of new puppies? "We should separate them," suggested Dr. Martinez, one of the newer veterinarians. "It's too risky. Male lions aren't known for their tolerance of young animals, even if this one does act like a dog." But Sarah, who had watched Kovu grow from a tiny cub into the gentle giant he'd become, stood firm. "If we separate them now, we'll break the trust we've built. Let's observe first. Kovu has already defied every natural instinct we thought we understood about lions." The debate continued right up until the day Bella gave birth to 6 healthy puppies in her special den within the expanded enclosure. The staff watched through monitoring cameras, hearts in their throats, as Kovu approached the den entrance. Bella, despite her exhaustion, lifted her head and gave a soft woof of greeting. What happened next left even the most seasoned researchers speechless. Kovu, all 450 pounds of him, lay down at the den's entrance, positioning himself like a living shield between the newborns and the outside world. When one of the tiny puppies stumbled toward him, barely able to walk, everyone held their breath. With infinite gentleness, Kovu used his massive paw, capable of taking down a wildebeest, to nudge the puppy back toward its mother. "I've never seen anything like it," whispered Dr. Thompson, shaking his head in amazement. "He's not just tolerating them, he's actively protecting them. Look at his body language." Indeed, Kova had assumed a posture that combined both lion and dog behaviors. His ears constantly swiveled, alert for any threats, while his tail wagged gently whenever a puppy came near. He would periodically rise, patrol the perimeter of their enclosure, then return to his guard position. As the weeks passed, Kova's role evolved from guardian to what the sanctuary staff could only describe as uncle. He would watch with incredible patience as the puppies used his mane as a climbing gym, never showing a hint of aggression even when tiny teeth would tug at his ears. When the puppies began their wobbly attempts at walking, Kova would follow behind them, using his nose to gently push them back up when they stumbled. Most remarkably, he seemed to understand their fragility. The same lion who could playfully roughhouse with Bella now displayed extraordinary delicacy with her puppies. He would carry them in his mouth with such tenderness that it brought tears to the eyes of hardened researchers, his massive jaws, designed to crush bone, now carefully cradling puppies as if they were made of glass. "It challenges everything we thought we knew about predator psychology," Dr. Thompson noted in his research journal. "Kova isn't just suppressing his predatory instincts, he's developed a complex set of nurturing behaviors that we didn't think were possible in male big cats." The puppies, for their part, showed no fear of their enormous protector. They seemed to view him as just another, albeit much larger, family member. They would sleep curled against his warm flank, play tug-of-war with his tail, which he would deliberately hold still for them, and even try to imitate his unique bark roar. One incident particularly demonstrated the depth of Kova's commitment to his unusual family. During a routine maintenance check, one of the puppies managed to squeeze through a temporary gap in the enclosure. Before any of the staff could react, Kova had already sprung into action. Instead of pouncing or chasing, typical lion behaviors, he herded the puppy back towards safety, using the same gentle shepherding techniques he'd learned from Bella. "What's fascinating," Sarah explained to a group of visiting zoologists, "is how he's combined his lion's strength with dog-like gentleness. Watch how he uses his size to block escape routes while encouraging the puppies back to safety, just like a sheepdog would." As the puppies grew, they developed their own unique behaviors that seemed influenced by both their mother and their lion protector. They showed unusual courage for their size, but also a gentleness that mimicked Kova's careful interactions. They would attempt to stalk and pounce like little lions, but end their attacks with playful dog-like barks. The sanctuary had to expand their observation programs to accommodate the growing interest from the scientific community. Researchers from around the world came to study this unprecedented family dynamic. Papers were written, theories were proposed, but no one could fully explain the depth of the bond between Kova and his adopted family. "Perhaps," suggested Dr. Thompson during one particularly heated academic discussion, "we've been looking at this all wrong. Instead of trying to explain why a lion would protect puppies, we should be asking ourselves why we ever assumed they couldn't. Kova isn't just challenging our understanding of lion behavior, he's challenging our assumptions about the limitations of interspecies relationships." The most touching moments often came at dusk, when Bella would gather her puppies for sleep. Kova would perform one final patrol of their territory, then settle himself at the den entrance, his massive frame creating a protective barrier. The puppies would often abandon their mother's side to snuggle against their lion guardian, creating a scene that defied natural order but somehow seemed perfectly right. "They're rewriting the rules of family," Sarah observed one evening, watching the unusual group settle down for the night. "And maybe that's the biggest lesson Kova has to teach us, that family isn't about species or instinct or natural order. It's about choice. Every day, he chooses to be their protector, just like Bella chose to be his mother." What none of them realized was that this peaceful family dynamic would soon face its greatest test, one that would push the boundaries of Kova's learned behaviors and challenge the very nature of his dual identity. The real question wasn't whether he could protect the puppies from ordinary threats, but what would happen when he faced a challenge from his own world, a challenge that would force him to choose between his lion nature and his dog family. The first warning came at dawn. Bella's sharp bark cut through the morning mist, followed by an unfamiliar sound that made every sanctuary staff member freeze: the deep, resonating roar of a wild male lion. Not Kova's playful bark roar, but the authentic, primal sound that had struck fear into prey animals for millennia. Sarah was the first to reach the observation post, binoculars pressed to her eyes as she scanned the perimeter. There, just beyond the sanctuary's outer fence, she spotted him, a massive male lion, his dark mane matted and scarred face telling stories of countless battles. He was larger than Kovu, with muscles hardened by years of fighting for survival in the wild. "Alert all staff," Sarah radioed, her voice tense. "We have a Category 1 intrusion. Adult male lion, approximately 8 to 9 years old, showing territorial behavior. He's testing our fences." The rogue lion had chosen his timing well. Recent heavy rains had softened the ground around some fence posts, creating potential weak points. More concerning was the location he was investigating, uncomfortably close to the expanded enclosure where Bella, Kovu, and the puppies resided. Inside their enclosure, the atmosphere had changed dramatically. Bella, her maternal instincts in full force, had already herded her 6-month-old puppies into their reinforced den. But it was Kovu's reaction that caught everyone's attention. Gone was his usual playful demeanor. He stood rigid, his own impressive mane bristling, eyes locked on the distant intruder. "Look at his body language," Dr. Thompson observed from the safety of the monitoring station. "We're seeing something unprecedented here. He's displaying territorial lion behavior, but his positioning is pure sheepdog. He's actually herding the puppies while maintaining a defensive stance." The sanctuary staff worked quickly to reinforce vulnerable points in the fence, but nature had its own plans. A sudden cloudburst turned the already soft ground into mud, and before anyone could react, the rogue lion found his opportunity. With power built from years of wild survival, he burst through a weakened section of fencing. Alarms blared across the sanctuary. Staff scrambled to implement emergency protocols, but they all knew the harsh truth. They were too far away to reach Bella's enclosure before the intruder. Everything now depended on Kovu, and no one was certain which side of his nature would prevail. The rogue lion's intent was clear. In the wild, male lions taking over new territory typically eliminated any young animals, ensuring their own bloodline would dominate. The puppies, small and vulnerable, would be easy prey. To him, they represented nothing more than a quick meal and a way to establish dominance. Bella, though well past her prime at 8 years old, positioned herself at the den's entrance. Her lips pulled back in a snarl, every muscle in her body tense. She might be smaller, but she had something the rogue lion didn't: a mother's fierce determination to protect her young. The intruder approached with the confident swagger of a predator who had never known defeat. His scarred face and muscled frame spoke of countless victories over rivals. He assessed the scene with cold calculation: an aging dog, 6 defenseless puppies, and a strange male lion who seemed confused about his own nature. In his experience, this should be simple. What happened next would be talked about in wildlife research circles for years to come. As the rogue lion lunged toward the den, Bella launched herself forward with desperate courage. But before either could clash, Kova moved with explosive speed. He positioned himself between the intruder and his adopted family, but his defensive stance was unlike anything the watching researchers had ever seen. Instead of the head-on confrontation typical of male lions, Kova began circling the intruder, employing the same herding tactics he'd learned from Bella. His movements were precise and calculated, each step aimed at pushing the rogue lion away from the den rather than engaging in direct combat. The intruder, momentarily confused by this unconventional behavior, hesitated. He had expected either submission or a traditional lion fight, not this strange hybrid of behaviors. When he tried to circle around toward the den, Kova blocked him with a combination of lion's strength and sheepdog strategy. "This is remarkable," Dr. Thompson whispered into his recorder. "He's using his lion size and strength, but his tactical approach is pure canine. He's treating the intruder like a threat to be managed, not a rival to be defeated." The rogue lion, frustrated by Kova's unusual tactics, launched a direct attack. But years of playing with puppies had given Kova an extraordinary level of body control. He dodged the charge with unexpected agility, then countered with a move that left everyone gasping. He nipped at the intruder's heels like a herding dog, but with the force of a lion behind it. As the strange battle continued, the rogue lion grew increasingly confused and agitated. Every attempt to reach the den was thwarted by Kova's bizarre but effective combination of lion power and dog strategy. When direct attacks failed, the intruder tried to use traditional lion intimidation tactics, roaring challenges and aggressive displays. Kova's response defied all expectations. Instead of roaring back, he unleashed his signature bark roar, the sound so startling and alien that it actually made the intruder back up in confusion. It was as if the very strangeness of Kova's behavior had become a weapon in itself. The sanctuary staff, now arriving with tranquilizer guns, held their positions, captivated by the unprecedented scene unfolding before them. They watched as Kovu, moving with the precision of a trained sheepdog but the power of a lion, systematically pushed the intruder away from his family. The final moment came when the rogue lion, exhausted and bewildered by Kova's unorthodox defense, made one last desperate lunge toward the den. Kova met this challenge not with claws and fangs, but by rearing up to his full height and delivering a series of rapid bark roars that seemed to shake the very air. The combination of this alien sound and Kova's imposing presence finally broke the intruder's resolve. With a final snarl of confusion, the rogue lion retreated, slinking back through the damaged fence and disappearing into the wilderness. He had come expecting an easy victory over an apparently confused lion, only to face something his wild instincts couldn't comprehend, a creature that combined the best of both lion and dog, creating something entirely new. As the danger passed, Kova's transformation was equally remarkable. The fierce defender instantly melted away, replaced by the gentle guardian who rushed to check on each puppy, nuzzling them carefully just as Bella did. The puppies, who had watched the entire confrontation from their den, bounded out to celebrate their protector's victory, seemingly unfazed by the danger they had just escaped. Sarah, finally lowering her tranquilizer gun, smiled as she watched Kova settle back into his familiar role, letting the puppies clamber over him while maintaining a watchful eye on the horizon. Sometimes, she mused, the greatest strength isn't in following our nature, but in choosing who we want to be. What none of them realized was that this confrontation, remarkable as it was, had set the stage for an even more extraordinary development in Kova's unique journey, one that would challenge not just their understanding of animal behavior, but their very definition of family. The rogue lion's retreat proved to be temporary. 3 days after his first appearance, just as the sanctuary staff were beginning repairs on the damaged fence, he returned. This time, he wasn't just testing boundaries, he was on a mission. Dawn had barely broken when the intruder launched his attack. He had watched, learned, and chosen his moment perfectly. Most of the sanctuary's night staff had left, and the day's shift hadn't fully arrived. The weakened fence, still under repair, offered little resistance to his powerful frame. But someone else had been watching too. Kovu, who hadn't slept properly since the first encounter, was already alert. His time with Bella hadn't just taught him dog-like behaviors, it had taught him the importance of vigilance, of protecting what mattered most. The wild lion burst into the enclosure with devastating force, but what happened next would become legendary in wildlife research circles. Instead of responding with typical lion aggression, Kova implemented a strategy that left observers stunned. "He's not fighting like a lion at all," Dr. Thompson breathed into his recorder as he rushed to the observation post. "He's using tactical movements I've only seen in highly trained shepherd dogs. But how can he possibly?" Kova's approach was unprecedented. Rather than meeting the intruder head-on in a traditional lion battle of strength, he began executing a series of complex herding maneuvers. He circled rapidly, making short rushes and strategic retreats, each movement calculated to keep the rogue lion off balance and away from the den where Bella guarded her puppies. The intruder, massive and battle-scarred, seemed completely baffled by these tactics. He would lunge, expecting the direct confrontation typical of male lions, only to find Kova had already moved, striking from an unexpected angle with quick, precise movements. "Look at his footwork," Sarah pointed out to the gathering staff. "He's using the same patterns Bella uses when she's herding strays. But he's combining it with a lion's power and speed. It's like watching two different species fighting styles merged into one." The wild lion's confusion quickly turned to frustration. Each time he tried to approach the den, Kova would appear with his unique bark roar, the sound so startling and alien that it repeatedly made the intruder hesitate. This moment of hesitation was all Kova needed to implement another herding maneuver, gradually pushing the attacker away from his family. But the rogue lion hadn't survived in the wild by giving up easily. In a burst of primal fury, he charged directly at the den entrance. This was the moment everyone had feared. Would Kova's unusual tactics hold up against raw, natural aggression? The answer came in a display that would be studied and debated for years to come. Instead of meeting the charge with equal aggression, Kova executed a move that seemed to defy both lion and dog behavior patterns. He feinted to one side, much like a sheepdog redirecting a stubborn sheep, but then used his full lion's strength to shoulder-check the intruder off course. The impact was thunderous, sending the rogue lion sprawling. Before he could recover, Kova was already implementing his next move. He began a rapid series of short rushes and retreats, each accompanied by his intimidating bark roar, creating a bewildering pattern of movement that seemed to disorient the intruder completely. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Thompson commented, frantically taking notes. "He's using psychological warfare in a way we've never seen in either species. The combination of unfamiliar sounds and movements is actually overwhelming the intruder's natural fighting instincts." The wild lion, used to straightforward battles of strength and dominance, found himself unable to adapt to Kova's hybrid fighting style. Each time he tried to establish a traditional pattern of combat, Kova would switch tactics, alternating between herding movements and powerful lion strikes. But the most shocking moment was yet to come. As the battle reached its peak, Kova did something that defied all natural behavior patterns. Instead of going for the killing blow when he had the advantage, he positioned himself in a classic sheepdog stance, head low, body sideways, creating a barrier between the threat and his family. The rogue lion, bleeding from several wounds and visibly exhausted, seemed to struggle with this final contradiction. Here was a male lion, clearly powerful enough to fight traditionally, choosing instead to act as a guardian rather than a warrior. In that moment of confusion, Kova launched his final offensive. He combined a lion's roar with a dog's rapid-fire barking, creating a sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The psychological impact was devastating. The intruder, faced with something his instincts couldn't process, finally broke. The retreat was chaotic. The wild lion, his confidence shattered by this encounter with something beyond his experience, fled through the damaged fence. His departure wasn't just a physical defeat, it represented the triumph of learned behavior over natural instinct, of chosen family over territorial imperative. As the dust settled, Kova's transformation back to gentle guardian was immediate and complete. He rushed to check on Bella and the puppies, his movements now all dog-like concern rather than lion-like aggression. The puppies, sensing the danger had passed, bounded out to celebrate their protector's victory. "In all my years of wildlife research," Dr. Thompson later wrote in his journal, "I've never seen anything like it. Kova didn't just win a physical battle, he demonstrated that behavior isn't locked into genetic patterns. He chose a different way of fighting because he had chosen a different way of living." Sarah, watching Kova gently herd the excited puppies back into the safety of their den, smiled at the paradox they had witnessed. "Everyone expected him to either be a lion or act like a dog," she observed. "Instead, he became something entirely new, proof that family isn't about species or instinct, but about the choices we make and the love we choose to protect." The battle would become a cornerstone of research into animal behavior and adaptation, but for Kova, it was simply another day of protecting his chosen family. As night fell over the sanctuary, he resumed his guard position at the den entrance, his powerful frame relaxed but alert, ready to defend his unusual family with whatever combination of skills was necessary. What no one realized was that this victory, impressive as it was, would lead to even more extraordinary developments in the days to come. The story of the lion who fought like a dog was about to take yet another unexpected turn. In the months following the dramatic battle, something remarkable began to unfold at the Kivili Wildlife Sanctuary. The impact of Kovu's victory over the wild lion extended far beyond just protecting his family. It sparked a transformation that would challenge everything scientists thought they knew about animal behavior and learning. The first signs appeared during the puppies' play sessions. Bella's 6 young ones, now approaching their first birthday, had started exhibiting behaviors that left even the most experienced animal behaviorists scratching their heads. Instead of purely canine play patterns, they had begun incorporating distinctly lion-like movements into their daily activities. "Watch closely," Sarah pointed out to a group of visiting researchers. "See how they're stalking and pouncing? That's pure lion behavior. But look at how they immediately switch back to herding patterns. They're creating their own hybrid style, just like Kovu." The puppies had developed a fascinating new way of playing. They would crouch low like lions, stalking through the grass, but then suddenly break into the circular herding patterns typical of sheepdogs. Their vocalizations were equally unique, playful barks that sometimes ended in tiny attempts at roars. Dr. Thompson spent countless hours documenting this unprecedented behavioral development. "What we're witnessing," he wrote in his groundbreaking paper, "is the emergence of a new form of learned behavior. These puppies aren't just mimicking either Kova or their mother, they're synthesizing both species' traits into something entirely new." But the influence didn't stop with play behavior. As the puppies grew, they developed their own unique approach to problem-solving and territorial awareness. They would work together using a combination of lion pride coordination and sheepdog herding strategies, creating surprisingly effective responses to any challenges in their environment. One particular incident captured the attention of the global scientific community. When a young antelope accidentally wandered into their enclosure, the puppies didn't react with either predatory aggression or herding instinct. Instead, they formed a loose circle around the frightened animal, maintaining distance like lions on a hunt, but then gently guided it toward the exit using their inherited sheepdog skills. "It's as if they've inherited Kova's unique perspective," Sarah observed. "They don't see the world in terms of predator or protector, they've learned to be both and neither at the same time." The sanctuary quickly became a hub for researchers studying animal cognition and behavioral adaptation. Scientists from around the world came to observe this extraordinary family, their presence a testament to the revolutionary nature of what was unfolding in this corner of Africa. Kovu, now in his prime, seemed to take pride in his role as teacher to his adopted siblings. He would often demonstrate his unique techniques, showing remarkable patience as the puppies attempted to copy his movements. His gentle guidance of these cross-species learning sessions became the subject of numerous studies on animal mentorship and learning. Bella, watching her unusual family flourish, displayed her own adaptations. She had begun incorporating some of Kovu's protective patterns into her own behavior, creating a unique blend of maternal care that combined the best aspects of both species. The sight of a shepherd dog and a male lion working in perfect harmony to raise a litter of puppies became a powerful symbol of nature's adaptability. The media eventually caught wind of the story, and the sanctuary had to carefully manage the growing public interest. Documentary crews from major networks arrived to capture this unprecedented family dynamic, their footage inspiring millions around the world. The story of the lion who thought he was a dog, raising puppies who thought they were part lion, captured the public's imagination in a way few wildlife stories had before. But perhaps the most profound impact was on our understanding of animal behavior itself. The old paradigms of fixed instincts and unchangeable species-specific behaviors began to crumble in the face of this living example of behavioral plasticity. "What Kovu and his family have shown us," Dr. Thompson explained in a landmark presentation at the International Conference on Animal Behavior, "is that the boundaries we've drawn between species are far more fluid than we ever imagined. When given the opportunity, animals can transcend their genetic programming to create entirely new ways of being." As the years passed, the puppies grew into strong, confident adults, each carrying forward the unique legacy of their unconventional upbringing. They became living proof that family bonds transcend species barriers, and that love and learning could reshape even the most fundamental aspects of animal behavior. Visitors to the sanctuary would often stop in amazement at the sight of 6 full-grown dogs moving with the grace of lions, working together with their massive adopted brother in a dance of protection and play that defied categorization. The harmony of their interactions spoke to something deeper than instinct. It revealed the incredible adaptability of life itself. The sanctuary established a special breeding program, carefully monitoring how these learned behaviors might be passed on to future generations. To everyone's amazement, subsequent litters of puppies showed an inherent openness to learning cross-species behaviors, suggesting that the capacity for such adaptation might itself be hereditable. Kova's story became more than just a heartwarming tale of unusual adoption. It evolved into a symbol of hope and possibility. His legacy lived on not just in the behaviors of his adopted siblings, but in the way his story changed our understanding of what animals could become when given the chance to transcend their natural boundaries. In the end, Sarah reflected, watching Kovu and his family in the golden light of sunset, the most important lesson wasn't about lions learning to be dogs or dogs learning to be lions. It was about the power of love to transform us into something more than what we were born to be. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Kova led his unusual family in their evening patrol, his unique bark roar echoing across the sanctuary. The puppies turned adults moved in perfect synchronization with their lion brother, their movements a fluid blend of both species' strengths. Together, they had created something entirely new, a legacy that would continue to challenge our understanding of what was possible in the natural world. And somewhere in the gathering dusk, the spirit of that tiny orphaned cub who had found a home with a shepherd dog lived on, reminding us all that the truest families are the ones we choose, and the greatest strengths are the ones we discover when love leads us beyond the boundaries of what we thought possible.